Lopez, the Director of Advancement in ARCE's U.S. office. Thank you for joining us today. I'd like to remind everybody to renew your ARCE membership this year so you can continue to have access to these great insider programs like our lecture today. We are so excited to have a very special guest today, Dr. Ogden Goelet, who's been a valuable member of ARCE and supporter of ARCE for many, many decades. Dr. Goelet is an accomplished Egyptologist who received his PhD in ancient Egyptian history from Columbia in 1982. During his esteemed academic career, he taught both undergraduate and graduate courses at New York University. Dr. Goelet is focused on the ancient Egyptian language and is affiliated with the Institute for the Study of the Ancient World. His research centers on Egyptian literature, religion, didactic materials used to teach students how to read and write the language. He served as the NYU Supreme Council of Antiquities Expedition of the Temple of Ramesses II at Abydos and on the board of the New York chapter of the Archaeological Institute of America. Notably, Dr. Goelet's study and translation of the Egyptian Book of the Dead is a major contribution.
ARCE for giving me an opportunity to discuss the fascinating temple.
Oh, it's the sorry.
So, as we start, there's Dr. Goelet. He's here with us. We're going to present a recording of his lecture, and at the end of the presentation, we will take questions. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. So we'll start now with the recording.
One second.
Also, just a technical note, the recording is a little low, so if you want to maximize the volume on your computer, that's more ideal. And also maximize your screen to see the slides.
Excuse me for 1 second while we're doing this. Transition to the recording.
Yeah, just please wait a moment.
I would like to thank ARCE for giving me an opportunity to discuss this fascinating temple. Furthermore, I'd like to give a special shout out to Dr. Fatma Ismail and the ARCE staff for their assistance. The book cover on the screen, The Temple of Ramesses II in Abydos, Volume 3, Architectural and Inscriptional Features, represents the latest publication connected with an epigraphical and archaeological project on which my colleague Dr. Sama Skanda and I have worked for the better part of the last 2 decades. My contribution to the project has been largely in the areas of epigraphy, political and religious history, and language, reflecting the years when I taught those subjects at the graduate and undergraduate levels at NYU. For those of you who are not familiar with the site of Abydos, here's a brief introduction. Abydos is about 500 kilometers south of modern Cairo and 60 kilometers south of Sohag. Abydos was the domain of the god Osiris, probably the most popular god in Egypt for most of its pharaonic history. He was the god of the afterworld and embodied the hope of an afterlife. In ancient times, Abydos was the most important city of the Thinite Nome, or administrative district. My lecture today is centered around the two largest monuments of the 19th Dynasty at Abydos, the temples of Seti I and Ramesses II, with the emphasis on the latter, so I'll keep my remarks about his father's temple, please. The Abydos temple of Ramesses II lies about 300 meters away from the larger and better preserved monuments of his father, Seti I. While researching Ramesses' temple, I often found that certain scenes and themes had useful parallels in the reliefs and texts of the Seti temple. I emphasize the word parallel. The relationships can be characterized as borrowing and adapting, but never rote copy. The official name of Ramses' temple was the Temple of Ramses, beloved of the moon, united with the Thinite Nome, often expanded to include the phrase, the temple of millions of years at the beginning. This was the first of many such temples that Ramses would construct all over Egypt and Nubia during his reign. The exact significance of the expression, temple of millions of years, is a complex problem, but the term is better left as is than inaccurately translating it as a mortuary temple. The temples of this sort maintain the king's cult while living, that serve as post-mortem cult thereafter. There's long speculation as to whether Ramses might have started construction as a joint project with his father's support, perhaps during a co-regency. After excavating this temple's four cornerstones, the cartouches on these foundation blocks make it quite clear that the work was undertaken independently by Ramses, and judging from the cartouches at the very start of his reign. The style of relief decoration in the rear of the temple confirms this conclusion. This is a view of the temple as it appears before recent clearances that are being conducted by my colleague, Dr. Sema Skander, the co-director with me of the New York University ISO project to study and publish this temple. A report on this work is being prepared for publication. The then directional arrow in the foreground reminds us that the temple's central axis is offset by a full 44 degrees to north. So we should be using notional directions rather than the actual compass-based orientation. The reconstruction shown here is pretty accurate, but should be modified to include the discovery of a small temple palace and a series of magazines uncovered just a few meters away from the temple's south wall, plus a vast complex of storerooms to the temple's north. In addition to the formal entrance to the main pylon, there were two side entrances on the south wall. The western entrance that led into the raised portico was restricted to priests and officials, while the eastern doorway allowed the general populace to enter to watch festival processions. Due to the extraordinary quality of its reliefs and paintings, Ramses' Abydos temple has been justifiably described as a well-appointed art station, and indeed, it has quite a few representations of barks. Court A was the processional court for festive events involving bark processions. As a sun court and a processional court, it was the place where the non-elite, the general public, might participate by viewing the royal and divine images passing by. Processions would enter through the pylon gateway, then ascend the broad middle staircase. The royal barks would enter a chapel on the raised portico and go no further. I shall discuss these barks only in passing. The temple's main festival was dedicated to Osiris, whose processional image was the Osiris or Abydene fetish, which I shall show shortly. A fetish, simply put, is an object receiving religious devotion and worship. It's not a particularly good description here, but it's stuck in the literature. Of the alternative names, I prefer the Osiris fetish because the captains describing it actually call it Osiris, Osiris Kentiamentiu, or Osiris Wennenefer. This symbolic form of Osiris is the focus of this talk. So I shall follow Osiris and march this discussion briskly through the impressive Danio diagram, gateway in Court B, and thence to the back of the temple and chapel D, the Osiris chapel. There would be much to discuss in Court D and its staircase, but that must wait for another lecture. Here's the route the festival procession took through courts A and B on its way to chapel D and the Osiris Suite at the back of the temple. On the north wall of Court B, there's an illustration of the impressive parade of priests and officials bearing the fetish. The location of this relief is marked in light yellow and indicated by a small vertical arrow. This is a representation of the transport of the Osiris fetish. It's improbably large. Notice that the priest bearers come in units of 4, so that the carrying poles would be several times longer than those in the relief in Chapel D, and a similar scene at the Seti temple, both of which showed the fetish on its depository stand. After including the 2 sempries in their panther skin robe, the immediate entourage with carrying the fetish would amount to 26 people, certainly an exaggeration. 4 men abreast would have at best great difficulty in squeezing through the door in the court C. This scene may have been inflated to reflect the great prestige of Osiris, or else we're being shown the procession on its march in the Abydene desert, as I tend to believe. At the far left and out of view here, the king performed some ritual activity as the fetish, openly displayed and held firmly in the Akermont approach. The mount is formed of a box frame with 2 lion-shaped bracing mounts set back to back at the center, holding the pole firmly upright. The lions are embraced by vultures on their upper bodies, the significance of which is unclear. Unfortunately, nothing above the base mount of the fetish that holds the pole has been preserved here. I'll discuss the fetish in its entirety next. Here's the painted relief in the Seti temple I just mentioned. It shows a complete view of the Osiris or Abydos festival at rest. The Osiris festival was simultaneously an effigy of the god Osiris and a symbol of his purview, the Thinite Nome. There's much symbolism embedded in this mushroom-shaped object, but I will concentrate only on features pertinent to this lecture. It roughly assembles a blue divine wig placed on a gilded pole. It is essentially the reliquary that contained the decapitated head of Osiris. Affixed to its golden cap are 2 stylized feathers alluding to those on Osiris's crown, and a fillet tied at the back. The twin uraei at the front part of the piece play a significant role in the rituals. The flanking solar-gram standards represent forms the canoe of the cataract and allude to Osiris's association with the waters of the Nile and the inundation of the new year. The relief shows in this view what one can better see the braces more clearly. In the back to back mummiform lion figures remind one of the earth god ARCE in his double lion form, I have adopted Catherine Eden's suggested name, the ARCE platform or ARCE mode. Note especially that the carrying poles were actually quite short. The fetish was light enough to be carried by a few priests. Excuse me. There are several competing reconstructions of the events of the Osiris festival and its associated procession. I do not intend to discuss this topic in all of its complexity. Instead, I want to focus on what transpired inside this temple. When the fetish procession moved through the temple, it was probably accompanied by other bards and standards, divine and royal. The fetish was first transported along the route marked in blue and finally halted in Chapel D, the largest chapel in the temple. The entire group of chapels around Court C, the second of hypostyle hall, was certainly the most restricted area of the temple. The chief chapels of Osiris Suite were chapels F, Horus, E, Osiris, and E, Isis. Since the temple was built and decorated back to front, these three chapels reflect the temple's initial theological program, not some later afterthoughts. After the fetish arrived in the Osiris Chapel, D, it was removed from the ARCE mount and carried into the blue shrine at the left, where it was then mounted in a special mounting blocks. They are nearly identical counterparts to these devices in Chapel N, thus allowing us to trace the ritual route to fetish from here to Chapel M. The king's posture shows that he was anointing the fetish in the presence of Isis. This is an important ritual, as we see later. The Bandu text beneath this scene states that the chapel was an Isikweret, great seat for the Osiris Kentium Empire. No identifying label for any of the Osiris figures in this chapel is preserved. The fetish's empty transport mount rests on a repository stand at the left of this relief. Note how short the carrying poles are in comparison with those shown in the large procession relief in Court B. This model looks more realistic and practical for movements inside the temple. Once the necessary rituals, which significantly included the anointment of the fetish, had been performed, the fetish was mounted once more on its ARCE platform and transported into Chapel M. However, it first had to transit through Chapel L. Chapel L was more than a mere transit point. Among the damaged text on the left-hand door of the wheel is the name of Shantaya, an avatar of Osiris, of Isis, who is associated with the making of the corn Osiris, earth impregnated with grain seed and molded in the shape of the mummiform of Osiris. The most likely place for the creation of the corn mummy would have been a chapel on the roof. Shantaya is shown sitting in a portable shrine in the Seti temple, further evidence that this complex manufacturing process existed in the early Ramesside period. Another scene here confirms that the first waters of the Nile inundation were used to make the corn Osiris as in later times. In addition, the adjacent Chapel K has a relief showing the bark of Kebes-Ta, earth hacker, another form of Osiris, who is an important function in the manufacture of the corn Osiris. In Chapel K, Ramses libates and censes before the bark of Kebes-Ta, earth hacker, in the midst of the temple of Ramesses. Kebis-Tar was a form of Osiris associated with the manufacture of the corn Osiris on the roof during the Khoiak festival. This scene and the mention of Shentayet are important proofs of this custom's existence in Ramesside Abydos. Previously, only undatable corn Osiris figures had been found there. Ironically, this practice is better attested at Thebes. This relief in Chapel L's cult focus depicts Osiris confirming Ramses' right to rule at the start of the new year. Osiris is shown here giving the king tokens of dominion, stability, and life for a long, stable reign along with many headsets. Note especially the articulated arms and legs of an unwrapped interactive form of Osiris who appears here as a normal anthropomorphic deity. This theme of the king's divine confirmation is reinforced in a scene on this chapel's left western wall. The king will thus enter Chapel M after being legitimized and blessed by Osiris. At position M0, at the left-hand side of the passageway between chapels M and L, there's a relief showing a striding male deity with his right arm raised in invocation and a papyrus scroll in his left. In the damaged area near the left side of his belt, we can barely glimpse a small portion of a white sash emerging from his belt that would stretch diagonally across his chest. This is obviously the god Thoth assuming his frequent role of elector priest. Although the text before and above him is largely destroyed, we can confidently restore much of Thoth's speech because there's a bit of preserved parallel scene and inscription in the doorway of Chapel E, the Isis chapel. What is immediately striking about Thoth's speech here is that he explicitly calls Chapel M, the room before him, an palace. The word is one of 5 terms that have been traditionally translated as palace by Egyptologists, perhaps largely on the basis of the frequency they're associated with the king and the regular term, use of the term Anquaducena following them. These are somewhat reasonable criteria that might limit the vocabulary for the royal residents to just these words. This question is particularly pertinent when we consider the vast array of administrative offices that might operate within a palace. The difference between these 5 terms and the nuance of their usage requires sifting through an enormous amount of textual and archaeological evidence. This is the subject best left to a conference volume. In this lecture, I'm opting for a more heuristic approach to the art. When discussing the term I feel more at ease if I drop the modifying word palace and treat the word by itself. A lexicographic study that allows for greater interpretive nuance. One need not always think palace. The god's for instance, might be a chapel or a statue shrine. Now, simplifying my conclusions about the complex term and its image in my dissertation on the words for the royal palace during the Old Kingdom, and adding further observation from the years since, the 3 most important meanings of this term are: 1, the was an administrative building closely connected with the king and the royal bureaucracy. It could, without question, signify his actual residence, but sometimes an may not have been residential in any real sense. A building of this sort appears in the administrative papyri known as the Abydene archive. The stone building with many surrounding storerooms located outside of the Ramesses temple's south wall might well have been this type of art, a temple palace, so to speak. 2, expanding on that last statement further, the art could refer at times to a building attached to or within a temple with administrative or ritual functions for the upper level temple staff and priests. Among other things, it can serve as a changing room during the ceremonies, another form of a temple palace. 3, perhaps the most important and often overlooked senses of the art occur when the term refers to a shrine, chapel, or temple room in which a deity dwelled. In the context of the world of the gods, art seems to be the third word for a smaller divine built dwelling. In contrast with temple words like nature, nature, etc. Significantly, the term is the only palace word that occurs in the pyramid text, and in one instance, it is said to be made of bare wood. The would then be a palace in the same sense that a temple is conceived the house of the deity. Depending upon the context, an would be a temple chapel or statue shrine inside a chapel. This slide is a selection of the signs that have gathered from a wide variety of sources, including computer-generated hieroglyphs from the Processions program. Rather than embarking on a rigorous lexicographic study of the now, I want instead to make a special pleading for recognizing an important subset of the by showing that many of these images depict the less than palatial dwelling, a chapel, a shrine, or in particular, a statue shrine. The is usually portrayed as a tall, narrow, tower-like structure surmounted by a hecker frieze. From outward appearances, the logogram does not present itself as a suitable dwelling, let alone as a royal palace. It lacks size and gravitas. Several in my collection here, pairs of marks suggestive of eye holes, air vents, or door handle at appropriate places on the object. A few are shown with juxtaposed watchet eyes in the manner of coffin and shrine decoration. The substructure often seems to sit upon a base element that is striped and approximately a third to a quarter of the overall height. In tombs and temples, the is a palace only in the sense that it describes where God or gods dwell. In fact, during the Old Kingdom, some gods had forms explicitly connected with an such as Nekhbed, Lady of the Lower Egyptian or Horus, dwelling in the divine Furthermore, as a shrine, the can be enclosed within another larger unit inside a temple court, as the examples in the middle show. Another common attribute of the hieroglyph is a diagonal slash across the upper portion. When colored, there's a difference between the two triangular sections. Sometimes the diagonal is a small like edge. The overall effect partially occurs the diagonal veils that envelop cabin shrines on processional barks. As here in the scene in the Seti temple, showing the king sensing the bark of the moon reposing inside a shrine, a bark shrine. Note that the doors on the veiled cabin shrine are closed, as in nearly every instance where these occur in reliefs and paintings. There's an interesting similarity in the way the palace is positioned within the broad court of West hieroglyph at the top when compared with the floor plan of the Chapel ML complex below. Chapel M was explicitly designated as an art palace in the passageway inscription between the two rooms. In order to enter Chapel M, it was necessary to take an indirect route. First, entering the Chapel L, then turning left through the small doorway. Rather than one arch, Chapel M had 9 statue niches, each with double-leafed doors, all of which might qualify as arch, set within a larger arch. On the right here, the holes with the door hinges of one of the Chapel M niches has been circled. The niches had double-leafed doors that closed to conceal the cult statues within. Unfortunately, none of the niches have more than 2/3 of the original height preserved. In the inner Osiris hall of the Seti Abydos temple, the Isis shrine and the Seti shrine have elaborate ornamental cartouches on their outside door jambs that identify these rooms as an arch. Text for the Seti shrine goes further, stating that it was the arch that magnifies the cult statue of this father Osiris. Note that in each case, the arch hieroglyph shows a fringed veil. This is the iconographic stele, dating to the reign of Senwosret III of the Middle Kingdom. It belongs to a small group of stelae describing the events of the Abydos festivals, and is arguably the most informative of the lot. Anyone writing on this major celebration must inevitably deal with this text and the object itself, which could be justifiably called the cornerstone of Abydos study. Having used this stele for decades to teach students Middle Egyptian, it pains me greatly to discuss this wonderful and enigmatic text only in the most cursory fashion. In 2010, John Iskander, no relation to Sam Iskander, published a study of a lintel bearing a version of the text known as the Hymn to Abydos. He noted that Osiris has the frequent epithet possessor of a good memory in the on this lintel. The text describes the end of Osiris' journey during the festival as follows. Praises to Abydos at the traveling of the Neshmet boat, the boat of the Lord of Abydos sitting in his palace. Iskander also noted that this statement seems to echo Iconoclast's description of what happened at the end of the rituals performed at Osiris's desert tomb. I brought Osiris Kentiamentium, Lord of Abydos, to his palace. I followed the god into his house, his purifications being performed, his seat being widened. I unloosened the binding cords inside of course, I would prefer that the translations drop the modifying term palace in both cases. These two quotes confirm that the final act of the Osiris procession was installing his image inside Na, just as it was done in the Ramesses temple in Chapel M, which furthermore is explicitly called an Am. In light of this, I would like to propose that Chapel M might well have been an additional location at Abydos where this final act of the Abydos mysteries could have been performed. This suggestion might explain why the temple, sometimes dismissed as a minor monument of Ramesses II, continued to be used for the Abydos festival for many centuries following. I would like to discuss this belief located on the right side of the doorway to Chapel M and the ritual that Ramesses performing. After the fetish had been carried into Chapel M, it was put before a large low bench that stood directly before this relief, or else for its counterpart on the opposite side of the door. The fetish's pole in yellow was then installed in the bracing mount, much like the one shown here and in Chapel D. Isis and the king are standing inside of a booth shrine and with the remounted fetish between them. The booth is surrounded by animal-headed guardians holding knives who are tested in many other depictions of the fetish at best. An undamaged version of this anointing scene appears in the inner Osiris Hall at the Seti temple that I shall show next. The Chapel M salving scene in the previous slide has a remarkable, better preserved parallel in the inner Osiris Hall at the Seti temple, the most secluded and inaccessible part of the temple. Luckily, the entire anointment scene is well preserved. It shows Seti inside of a booth shrine applying or removing salve on the wig and the double ulaei of the Abydos fetish as Isis attends on the opposite side. There's another striking feature of the scene. Inside the wig element at the top of the pole, we can see a faint full frontal image of a male face wearing a wig. Here's confirmation of our supposition that the fetish was thought to be the reliquary for the dismembered head of Osiris. The two columnar texts that flank the booth call the fetish by different names or forms of Osiris. On the left, he is Nefer in the midst of the temple of Menma'at. On the right, the fetish is identified as Osiris Kentiamentiu in the midst of the temple of Menma'at. If there'd been a label explaining the ritual, it would have been Irit or Henek Med, doing or offering salve, or Safrech Med, wiping off salve. Performing an anointment ritual of this sort may have been among the ritual acts that Iconoclast performed for Osiris, if we had interpreted the title on the right side of his schema correctly. Keep of the secrets of the two ladies, or two of Urea, referring to the double Urea on the fetish. Let us take a moment to consider what unction or anointment, the act of applying salve, signified and how important that event was. At both the Seti and Ramesses temple, the salving of the ureas or the crown of a divine statue occurred within a ritual sequence that included removing clothes, applying the priest king's hands, salving, etc., after its removal from its shrine. Alignment was often highlighted the chief event of this sequence, by which the statue or the fetish, as in this case, was renewed or made effective for the rest of the group of rituals that follow. Now a question arises. Who was the chief deity worshipped in the Abydos temple of Ramesses II? At first, it seems like one of those trick questions in the order of who is buried in Grant's tomb? What color was George Washington's white horse? All the evidence, especially in the much damaged Chapel D, the central chapel at the back and the largest of the temple, unsurprisingly points to Osiris as the temple's main deity. but we should qualify the answer a bit further. Yes, Osiris. But what form? What aspect? After all, in this temple's inscriptions, I encounter Osiris, Osiris Kentiamenti, Osiris Wennenever, and even Wennenever without further qualification. In the Abydos temples of Seti I and Ramses II, Osiris is named often further modified by a veritable proliferation of epithets such as the great God, Lord of the sanctified land, Lord of jet eternity, Lord of the Thinite Nome, Lord of Abydos, etc., that can complicate the issue greatly. This is the problem that has lately begun to interest many scholars. There have been several major publications investigating various aspects of Osiris and several conferences devoted to this complex deity over the past few years. At the moment, all I can contribute to this question about the nature and name of the living Osiris is to show how contradictory the evidence on his name is. By drawing our attention to for a few moments, just to view some of these unusual representations of the god, mostly in this temple and the Seti temple. This slide shows the instances of a living Osiris, each of 3 instances of a living Osiris, each of which have no surviving caption giving its name. In the first 2 scenes, the cult focus of the Isis and Horus chapels, Osiris may have appeared so much like a normal, unbound, and interactive deity, a living Osiris, so to speak, that it may not have registered with observers how unusual these 2 beliefs were. In both cases, the green-skinned figure sitting enthroned between a male and female deity in attendance to be no other than Osiris, portrayed in a rather uncharacteristic fashion. Strikingly, this living Osiris was the central figure in the cult focus of these chapels that were ostensibly dedicated to Isis and Horus, the temple's 2 most important deities after Osiris himself. The Isis chapel's inscriptions, furthermore, explicitly designated it as an Ah. It was likely that the Horus chapel was likewise an Ah. The green color skin in all 3 instances is confirmed by comparisons with other elements in the scene, such as the dark blue mob statue bases, green floor mats, stripes on the thrones, even some common hieroglyphs. At the bottom right scene from Chapel L's focus is a similar unbound and interactive green-skinned god. As noted earlier, he's shown investing Ramses with tokens of a good and stable reign, in addition to many headsets. These examples make one wonder what form of Osiris was intended in these reliefs. Unfortunately, without name labels, the evidence is unclear. At this point, I could present more slides of the living Osiris and related forms of Osiris. But in the interest of time, I shall quickly skip ahead to the end of the lecture. Now, the representation This well-known belief from the Seti temple presents one of the most striking images of Osiris, who is both dead and alive at the same time. The scene depicts how Isis contrived to revive the dead husband enough so he could engender their son Horus posthumously. As Osiris lies on his funeral bed, Isis has reanimated him, or at least his phallus, sufficiently. Now, assuming her form as a kite, she perches upon Osiris's erect phallus, impregnating herself. The text band above identifies him as Osiris Wenenefer in the midst of the so-called enclosure. You know, whenever I see this image, I can't help but think, not tonight, dear, I'm just dead. Now conclusions. The palace word has a significant related meaning as a dwelling place of a god in the form of a temple chapel, statue, shrine, or niche. There were two such chapels at the Abydos temple of Ramesses II, the nine-niched Chapel M, and one of the most important chapels in the temple, Chapel E, dedicated to Osiris's consort Isis, Chapel F. The chapel for his son Horus was equally important, and it too was likely an art. 3. Osiris appears at the center of attraction in chapels E and F, although they were ostensibly dedicated to Isis and Horus. In both places, he assumes an unusual form of living Osiris, interactive and with fully articulated limbs. The name of this form is unclear. He had the same form at the cult focus of Chapel L. Chapel M might well have served as an occasional alternative location for the performance of the Osiris mysteries, in addition to the traditional desert tomb chapel at Peker near el-Kab. Thank you. Now what do?
Stand by.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Goelet. We have a question. We got a question from Carrie during the presentation. Carrie asks, in the modern temple, how much of the original roof is missing, and are there any projects underway for restoration?
Unfortunately, the entire roof has disappeared. I think we have one small section of ceiling block that fell in one of the chapels, showing some stars, you know, this typical starred ceiling of a temple. Obviously the temple was dismantled from top down. However, we know that the temple had a roof because we have a staircase to it. Obviously, you don't make a staircase to nowhere except maybe in some song. So as far as restoring it, would be far too much. You know, we would have to have tons and tons of concrete, and furthermore, we would have to restore all of the pillars. Another, which alone would be a monumental task in the literal sense of the word.
Okay, Dr. Goelet, we have several people thanking you for a outstanding presentation. And we're getting questions here from Brian Kramer. Have you found any evidence yet that Ramses had his own Osirian behind his temple like his father did?
I'm sorry, my wife is my supplementary hearing aid.
That's okay, I'll repeat it.
I can't. What?
I'll repeat the question. Is your wife there?
Yes.
Hi. The question is, have you found any evidence yet that Ramses had his own Osirian behind his temple like his father did?
There'd long been speculation, which we initially bought into, that there would be something very deep outside the west wall. We did do some sondages in there, some digging. There was no such thing. So there isn't, let's say, an Assyrian like the one that was outside of the Seti temple, unfortunately. So,
Okay, thank you. We do have a number of more questions. Can you hear me?
yes.
The next question is from Audrey. She asks, how does one create or make a corn Osiris?
A corn Osiris. How do you make that?
A corn?
C-O-R-N?
The corn Osiris or the corn mummy, these were made, first of all, a mold was made, just like a cookie mold, except it was about 3 feet long, and a specially concocted mixture of grain, water, and soil was mixed together. Of course, all of this with very special ritual attached, and the purity of the water. The water would have to be, in some cases, from the first waters of the inundation at Abydos, etc. And this would be, this mold would be separated from the corn Osiris and within and exposed to light, and within a couple of days, the grain would sprout. This is, of course, a metaphor for the rebirth of Osiris, and Osiris was at base associated with vegetation and the renewal of the rich agriculture of Egypt. That that would stay. I think it would stay on the roof, but the old corn Osiris would be taken out to the desert and buried. The bark that was associated with chapel with Kebesta, Earth Hacker, in chapel K, shows the funerary bark of the old corn Osiris, and that would be taken out into the desert. There's also another, and buried. There's another theory that the corn Osiris was taken to the river and buried that way.
Okay, thank you. We have several more questions, so I hope you're up for it. This next one is a two-part question from Kat Michael. First of all, she's asking, where's the temple located in respect to the Nile River? And the other thing she asks is, could the vultures embracing the lion leg braces for the Osiris fetish actually be kites representing Isis and Nephthys?
That's a good, I'll work backwards in this. The idea of Isis and Nephthys as kites, of course, that's a very common motif. But these do seem to be not kites, but vultures. So it'd be odd on that respect. But then again, the vultures on the side of the embracing the figurines, the lion figurines, is strange in itself. Now, the other question,
Where the temples look.
the temple is not right there on the Nile. However, we have evidence that there was a staircase down to what would have been the processional canal, which would be roughly along the edge of the cultivation, the cultivation today. So it wasn't like this recently found chapel that had been built during the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, which was really at a much lower level. So that's at least something that we could look into a little bit more.
Okay, moving on, we have many thanks from LA. Thank you for the wonderful lecture, Dr. Goelet. Can you tell us what the ritual function was of Chapel S as it relates to Chapel M, assuming there is enough preserved to hint at Chapel S's function?
This is a very difficult question. It's, and in fact, made more difficult by the state of the niches in Chapel S. I have some ideas about that, but I'll get into that in just a second. The trouble is that in interpreting that is that unlike the analog, the counterpart to Chapel L is really destroyed. So we have very little information there. The doorway inscription, at least one part of it, seems to be, again, a duplicate of the one that you have at Chapel L. There's nothing survives in that little passageway between S and R. So we don't have a counterpart to that very helpful scene of Thoth invoking the fetish or Osiris to enter into an whatever. Furthermore, when you go inside the chapel, the two illustrations, or the counterpart to the two illustrations of the anointing of the fetish with the king and Osiris, is not there. I mean, I think we have feet, and it doesn't seem to, just feet have been various gods or people show there. So it's a very difficult place to restore. I have a suspicion that maybe the let's say the overall tenor of the gods mentioned in the niches of Chapel S might have more to do with Sokar and Ta-Sokar, etc. But and that would be something like the situation in the Seti Temple. As Catherine Eaton has noted, there's virtually no mention whatsoever of, excuse me, of Sokar in the area where the 7 big bark chapels are, or in the outer Osiris Hall and the inner Osiris Hall. So you could say that Sokar is sealed off in his own area, and the Ta-Sokar, I'm sorry, I'm having a little senior moment here. The Nefertem, all of those things have more of Sokar. So Sokar and Osiris being separated, who knows? Maybe there was a similar separation, but not as sharp. Sokar is mentioned outside the doorway to the staircase. That's one of the few places within connected with the chapels. We don't know much about one section in Chapel B. I mean, not Chapel B, but the Court B, where maybe some other text pertaining to Sokar may have been mentioned. So that's a supposition. I would have to follow it through, but that's all I can really say about Chapel S at the moment. We were also hindered in the publication of our book. At the time it was being, that is volume 3. At the time, we really didn't have good photographs of those two, of the niches in those 2 chapels. And that's been rectified by some very nice photos and line drawing in volume 2, which Sana Skanda has admirably curated.
We have several, we have so many messages, Dr. Goelet, thanking you. You really make this study beautifully clear to all of us. So they're very fascinated by the lecture. And how are you feeling? Because we have maybe 6 or 7 more questions. Do you want to keep going?
I could go on for a little while, and
Okay.
then otherwise I'll turn into an Osiris, you know.
Okay, I'll try to consolidate a few. One is, this is another 2-part question. How would the cost to maintain the temple and the processional area, hold on a second, and objects be funded?
The cost or the cups?
No, the cost.
Cost.
Well, in the processional court,
The processionals and objects
And objects. Processionals and objects.
in the temple.
with all we have none, really. Processional objects survive only by, largely by accident. You're talking about things that were made often in precious metals and woods and things like that. And certainly in the third intermediate period, as we know from various texts connected with the so-called tomb robberies at the end of Dynasty 20, in times of disorder, or let's say foreign invasions, these things are stolen. Even putting a good spin on things, that not everything is the victim of theft. Also, we know that throughout Egyptian history, things made of let's say fine copper or gold or what silver were sometimes melted down and reused. So there's some when you're looking at something in an Egyptian exhibit that's made of metal, it might have had a prior life, so to speak. So, but we do know what these things would have been like because of a great number of papyri describing how they should ritually be made, how they should be used, and so we have a very good idea of what these things were. But a lot of this is idealization. They claim, some papyri claim the existence of a pretty steady rote of things to be, roster of things to be done all over Egypt. But then there's a lot of contradictory evidence. So some of this is merely aspirational, but that's about all I can say. They are quite a number. If you look at museum catalogs of what we shouldn't call Kleinkunst, small objects, you'll see quite a number of these things show up, dated to the full range of Egyptian history.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any additional theories on the significance of the dual uraei of the Osiris
The
fetish?
double uraei, it can, you can spell Nebti, that is the two ladies, by using two uraei. There's also references, especially in the Book of the Dead, to an area called Ma'ati, the double Ma'ats. That could also be hidden in the use of two uraei. Although, I'd point out, during the 25th dynasty, the Kushites used the double uraei on, excuse me, on their crowns. But there it was an idea, I guess, of one uraeus symbolizing Egypt, and the other uraeus symbolizing the domain over the Kushite region. So that's quite a number of things you can do with two uraei. But it's interesting that on the Iconophorid stela, there's there's a rather strange title that does show to Uraei, and it seemed this office of being a hairy seshta, keeper of the secrets, usually means something like a ritualist. So it might be an allusion to his participation in the mysteries, dealing with this great honor of touching the Uraei. Hello?
Sorry, I had to turn my audio back on. I think we have two more questions. One is, you mentioned that the temple was 44 degrees from true north. Is there any indication that the temple might have been oriented toward, and would that have any significance on Osiris?
This is another puzzle. We know, for instance, that the Seti temple was pointed at a certain spot in the desert. If you drew a line right out of the central axis. And perhaps the same can be done with the Seti temple, but it would be pointing to a different place. This raises the question of whether, let's say, during the reign of Ramesses II, that another area away from Peker or wherever the Seti temple was pointed, whether Ramesses picked, another spot out in the desert where Osiris, the Osiris mysteries would be performed. But there's also the possibility that there was something geographically, topographically, I should say, about the site of the temple that made it face in this 45-degree deviation. Lord knows, maybe a big rock or something like that, or underground water. Who knows? So we don't know what the surrounding area really looked like. You know, Abydos is a place where if you dig a deep hole in the, let's say, a large rectangular pit, quite deep, come back in 100 years and it will be all filled up with sand. So who knows? It might have been just topographically defined.
Okay, I think we've made it to the last question, Dr. Goelet.
Okay.
The question is from Martha: did the different forms of Osiris call for different offerings specific to that form?
I don't think so. Maybe different rituals. The straightening out Osiris Kentiamentio, Osiris Wenenefer, you know, these various things. I'm a little bit skeptical about certain ideas that rituals tend to be rather specific to a god. For instance, that's why I concentrated on anointment. If the this was part of the so-called daily ritual. In all of the bar chapels where this particular part of the ritual is preserved and displayed, the text is nearly identical. Not only that, when you compare, let's say, what the king and what the god receiving the unction or the anointment is wearing, it just seems to vary. Yet the text, the ritual text, remains the same. So, as some people have suggested, it gets rather monotonous. So break up the monotony. Have the king wear this, have the god wear that, have the god stand up, have the god sit. So it might not be a particularly fruitful way to route to pursue. But I'm going to try to do something like it. Maybe I'm a masochist. So.
Do you have any final thoughts, Dr. Goelet?
Not really. At this point, I feel rather drained of thought.
Well, I would say that we're still getting questions, and thanks was
They can
very
send
well
the
engaged
questions to me, and I'll try and answer to the best of my ability. I tell my graduate students that when they're preparing for orals, let me tell you, when you start teaching, every day is an oral examination. So I at least this time I'd be able to go to my books and give specific references that people can follow. So
Well, thank you.
I used to say in the 1950s, keep those letters and postcards coming in, folks.
So we have shared your email address in the chat. People have also been asking for it, so we've shared it twice. So just be on the lookout for a number of questions this week following up on the presentation. So
as they say, Bolo, be on the lookout.
Thank you so much. We are so thrilled to have you here today. It was an amazing presentation and very, very popular. I think, we'll have to have you back very soon. So thank you for that. And again, if you want to ask any additional questions, please send Dr. Goelet an email at og1@nyu.edu.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
What you sent him.